Ma'am, should I start? Yes. A very good afternoon and a warm welcome to the national seminar organized by the Women Development Cell of Mata Sundari College. We would like to extend our welcome to everyone present here. We are truly delighted to have our esteemed principal ma'am with us today. We are honored to have two distinguished speakers, Dr. Anshu Srivastav, an esteemed academic and associate professor in the Department of Education Administration at NIPA, who will be speaking on empowering women through the lens of G20. With a background in the political science at the University of Delhi, her research explores gender and class politics in the contemporary India. In 2022, she published Liberalized India, Politicized Middle Class and Software Professionals, a widely discussed monograph by Routledge. Her work has made an impact in institutions like PHU, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, JNDU, and Delhi University, as well as being featured in the Garva in September 2022. We are equally pleased to have Dr. Ayushi Ketkar, a distinguished academic, scholar, and a faculty member at JNU's Special Center of National Security Studies and a PhD holder in cultural diplomacy, will be speaking on women in conflict and civil wars in civilized world. She earned the prestigious President's Gold Medal from the University of Hyderabad. Her journey has been marked by the active engagement in international assignments, including the UN Conference on Terrorism, Harvard Project for Asian Studies. She is renowned for her innovative views on global issues related to religion, culture, demography, and electronic media. Beyond the academia, she actively advises educational institutes, think tanks, and NGOs offering expertise in curriculum design, soft skill training, value-based education, and the entrepreneurship development. We are also happy to have Lokesh Sir, the IQAC coordinator, and Manjeet Sir among us. Our respected teachers from the other departments and our cherished student family, your presence adds the immense value to this gathering. It is now my privilege to invite Rashi, the President of Women Development Cell, to take the stage.
To mark this occasion, I would be glad to request our Honorable Principal Ma'am, Professor Dr. Harpreet Kaur, to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Anshu Srivastav, Associate Professor at NIPA, with a bouquet, and Dr. Ayushi Ketkar, Associate Professor in Special Center for National Security Studies at JNU. Furthermore, I would like to invite the convener of Women Development Cell and the coordinator of this national seminar, Professor Dr. Madhuri Sukhija, come to honor our principal ma'am with the bouquet. Now I request Ms. Savita ma'am, co-convener of Women Development Cell, to give a token of appreciation to Mr. Lokesh Gupta sir, coordinator IQAC.
Now I request Rashi to give a token of appreciation to Mr. Manjeet sir. Now I request Professor Madhuri ma'am to take over.
Thank you so much, Anushka, Rashi, and Kashyap, our WDC student coordinators, for having conducted this so far so smoothly. No function is complete without Principal Ma'am, Professor Harpreet Kaur. I think her administrative expertise, her academic acumen have been like a blessing for this college. And I truly mean it, ma'am. Can we hear it for ma'am? And I think the college has achieved great heights under her leadership. She's truly an emblem of Nari Shakti, so to speak. So now we'll call upon ma'am to please give a welcome address to all of you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of WDC Mata Sundari College, I extend a very, very warm welcome to our guest for today, Dr. Anshu Srivastava from NEPA, very close to us. We are our neighbor, and Ayushi Ketkar from JNU, and of course, my WDC team. WDC team has made this possible along with IQAC and administration and all the faculty members who have been a part of this and the student coordinators. So I welcome you all and all the students also who have been a part of this. I think this Women Development Cell should have been the most important body because here we are just to make you empowered. Basically, education is one means how empowerment can come through, but other activities are also equally important. So other things are equally important. So along with it, you have to build other skills, and most important skill is the your own personality and how you take pressure. That is very important. You have to understand that the psychological pressures are there, mental pressures are there. How with ease if you are taking these things. I think WDC is here to teach you, to empower you, and make you more confident about yourself. So bring that confidence. And if you will bring that confidence, I think you can steer the world very nicely. You will make a mark in your family and in the society as well. So what is important is that you be educated, of course, but also understand the skills of life. And of course, thirdly, you should be aware of the surroundings, all the laws which are available and what you can do for the society. That is very important. And for today's topic, I think both the topics are very interesting. One is about G20, the women-led development. The G20, again, a people's movement. Our aim was that, and no country has shown so much of enthusiasm. Through the entire year, we have seen so many activities which have come up and, which we are doing. And women with almost 50%, it was very important to take women into consideration and give them a chances and opportunities so that they can lead. And they are talking about women-led development is one thing, I think, we all talk about the inclusivity. So, for example, Turkey basically meant about making things more inclusive and other countries also. But here, giving them a position where they can steer the change, that is very important. I think that was our, I can say, victory also in that sense, that if we have these catch lines, that, women-led development and we materialize those. One thing is, of course, cash lines are important, but we are making this possible in the society. That is very important. So this women-led development has been really a face of G20 also. And of course, the tracks which have worked all through the G20, they have been working on women empowerment as well. Women empowerment, if I take just one thing, in sustainability, how women can be in forefront, because women are there so close to the nature. What they can do about sustainability, that is, I think, for all of us to visualize, to understand and to implement. So we have to implement things. We can do a lot many things. We can forge partnerships. We can think about climate finance, entrepreneurship and education and all these things. So this is one of the tracks. But then, entrepreneurship and other things are also important. So this teamwork which was there in the G20 forums, which has led to certain solutions and certain, policy statements also later on. And we talk, and, in the document later on released, I think women has a very vital role to play. And it's a very vital role to play. So this is very important. So here we have to understand that how women can make a mark for themselves in the public domain, in the private enterprises, and also you can say that how entrepreneurship they are creating, how they become entrepreneurs. And if we see the record of India, I think many women have come up and they are successfully leading as entrepreneurs. So women that way are essential contributors to the economy. They are doing so much, the development of the business and growth, and also women are becoming successful entrepreneurs as well. And they are starting their business and so on. Now we have to see that there are, but yet we face so many problems. The problems can be pertaining to the social arena, and most probably nowadays what I'm feeling is we interact with the students, the majority of problems are psychological. There's nothing in the content, is nothing, it's only in the mind. Psychological problems are just in the mind. You have to come out of that, and that is, I think, most important thing. Because if you are confident and you are not thinking about your own self created problems, I think you can lead. And that learning, labor, leadership, all these three pillars of empowerment can be led by you, if only you understand what you are and how you can progress. And so learning, learning means we have a lot of information, but how to use that information for our benefit, that we have to, so we have to see how we benefit ourselves from that information, because information otherwise also, but how we are using it for our own end, that is more important. Labor, of course, labor, that is invisible labor also, and the which is not counted, that is also very important. And to bring that into the public domain is another challenge. And thirdly, the leadership, how you can be leaders, and you can be leaders only and bring about change. That women-led leadership can be there only when you are confident about your abilities, and then you think about your self-worth. And that self-worth is a key, and I can call it the magic. If you understand your own self-worth, if you understand your own self-esteem, I think it is very, you can really change the world. So firstly, you have to change yourself, be confident about yourself, and then you have to lead things. Now, the second topic also, women in conflict, uncivilized wars in civilized world. Of course, we talk about, how much, progress we have done. We are democracies, and we are talk about freedom of the people and dignity of the people, and so many keywords are there. But despite that, we are seeing wars in the Middle East and other areas also. Even if that, overt war is not there, there are certain social wars which are going in the various, parts of world. So that conflict is creating a lot of problem. Now, this conflict is because of the discriminatory practices also. And also philosophers sometimes contemplate whether this conflict is good or not. Because until that some kind of disagreement is there, progress is not possible. Progress will be possible only when you disagree with things and trying to find out something. But then it is also necessary that you create creativity in the whole entire process. In the war, I can pen down a lot of many problems. Physical problems would be there, psychological problems would be there. Also, your social capital will be also lost. And then so many other problems which we can see, of course, the physical threat is always there. But because I want to be positive here, and I want to, enthuse you with new ideas and positivity. And that's why I want to just, chart out few things, how in conflict zones also women can lead, that women-led development can be there in the conflict zones also. So what you have to understand is conflict can provide opportunities for the women as well. And here, of course, farming and everything is disrupted. I understand, and we also is there, but we have to tailor solutions. We have to understand and bring out new solution. And first thing is, of course, the local security has to be strengthened. If you are physically secure, and then I think other things can, be possible. So here, the local people we can come together and bring about a movement where the local security is possible, because the government-led security will not work there. Even the UN, even if they are there, then also they know that security is not going to help you so much unless we protect ourselves. And we can protect ourselves only when we are in groups. So that is one thing. Then new ideas can come up also. We can talk about social assistance also, and we can, assist others also and ourselves also. And our access to market also enhances, because market is disrupted. and you have to find solution in that whole entire crisis. This is what I meant to say, because life is gives you challenges today or tomorrow. Sometimes, challenges are there in front of you, but you have to understand that and bring about those challenges and channelize yourself to be make it your strength. So community-led reconstruction is also one thing where women can talk about themselves. So what I mean to say is that meaningful participation of women can be possible in any situation, whether it is in peace or whether it is in conflict. All we need to understand is that togetherness, which UN also emphasizes, that together we lead. So we have to come together, talk about the solutions, think about the solutions, be confident, protect ourselves and each other. So that, unity is going to be strength here. And of course, the whole path towards, progress is there in front of women. All we need is that we have to chart one action plan and implement it. So I'm so happy that the students have come. You must listen to such things, because our experts are there and they will speak about many new things which you must understand, because these things give you ideas, and when they give you ideas, you can also implement those ideas and they will come handy today or tomorrow. So that is why WDC is making an attempt for these interactions. So you understand the nuances of various aspects also, and various aspects you understand, and try to be yourself and develop your personality. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your encouraging words. Without further delay, I would like to invite Professor Madhuri Ma'am once more, who will share her opening remarks and also shed light on the national seminar.
Thank you so much, Principal Ma'am. It was a pleasure listening to you. And as always, your valuable inputs always, are inspiring for each of us. Okay, now I once again welcome everyone here, all our distinguished speakers, Lokesh ji, Manjeet ji, all our students, and also faculty members who joined from other departments. Now, before I proceed further, I would like to tell you that this national seminar, we made a lot of effort to put it in hybrid mode. And we have a couple of faculty members who joined in from other universities. I'll just randomly say 3-4 names, because there are about 20 to 30 faculty members. So maybe I'll just tell you that we have Dr. Abhay Vikram. He's from Department of Gandhian and Peace Studies, Bihar. We have Dr. Jugal Kishore, who's head of the Department Gandhian and Peace Studies from Motihari, Bihar again. Then we have Dr. Nirmal Singh he is also professor in political science in Punjab University. We also have Mr. Tenzing, again a research scholar in Punjab University. And we also have 2, in fact, research scholars from Meghalaya who joined us. We have Ms. Sange and Mrs. Joyta Das. I'm really sorry, I cannot, announce all the names, because we need to just proceed on. So, but thank you so much for coming, and we'll get together when the interaction goes on. You can put your questions in the chat box. Now, before proceeding further, and before I give the mic to Dr. Anshu Srivastava, I would like to just set the context of the national seminar this morning. You see, first particular theme is empowering women through the lens of G20. When we talk of India, the year 2023 belongs to the India's G20 presidency. As we know, G20 has gone much beyond. It's just not a premier economic international forum. It has pervaded every domain. And how can women-led development or women empowerment be far behind, right? So while much progress has been made on key global issues, gender inequality remains a prime concern both in the developed and the developing societies. Now, yesterday I was reading the New York Times, and I came across, a very important article. 25,000 women have got together in Iceland, and they're all protesting, led by their Prime Minister, Catherine. They're all protesting against unequal wages and against gender violence. So if Iceland happens to be the most gender equal country in the world today, if Iceland somewhere is struggling, then I think rest of the world really needs to take a cue from that. Now, going beyond that, Principal Ma'am has covered a lot, many perspectives. She's made our task easier for setting the context of the seminar. So I won't get into so many details, but maybe a minute or two I'll take. In 2017, you see the first Women 20 dialogue focused on the Asia Pacific region. And you would be surprised, pardon me, that in 2017 itself, a lot many policy recommendations came forth, a lot many best practices came forth, and these were there for the G20 member states to address gender gaps. Now, India's G20 presidency has not only carried forward the legacy, but has also tried to go beyond. Lokeshji, we are just winding up in 2 minutes. I'll be calling you. If you can please stay on just for 2 minutes. I'm winding up in 2 minutes. And Manjeet ji, please बैठ जाएं. बस 2 minute में मैं खत्म कर रही हूँ. So, India's G20 presidency, friends, has not only carried forward the legacy, it has also gone beyond. Whether it is providing necessary skills and resources, financial literacy, vocational training, better funding of programs, but personally speaking, I think what matters more also is how we change our societal attitudes towards women. And I think that is an important factor. And second is, how can we club education and legislative reforms? Each country has to learn something from that. Now, regarding the second theme, I'll take a minute. Women in conflict, uncivil wars in a civilized world. Wars and conflicts have become the norm today. They have taken center stage. But what pains me is that it is not just the civilian population who is getting affected. It is also the women who suffer disproportionately because of their sex and because of their pervasive gender inequality. And why is this? This is done as a tactic in war. Why? To make people fear, to dominate, to relocate members of a community, ethnic groups. And during conflicts, discrimination against women is also compounded by intersecting forms. They could be race, they could be religion, they could be sexual orientation, immigration status, and so on. But I think, Ayushi ji, where I would like you to respond, I'm floating across one or two pointers. Number one is that it is not war alone. It is peace and war, pre-war, post-war. I think there is a gendered continuum violence that is going on. It could be military rape, it could be genital mutilation in peacetime, and so on and so forth. Another factor I would want you to respond to is the unhealthy nexus that we have today between trafficking, sexual violence, terrorism, and organized crime. But being a cautious optimist like our principal ma'am, I don't want to end on a somber note. What I would like to say basically is that in conflict societies, in post-conflict societies, I think we are all seeing women are combatants. They are members of organized civil society. Women are human rights activists. How many of us can actually forget Malala Yousafzai, the girl, the 15-year-old girl who took the bullet? How can we forget Masa Armani also? How can we forget Nargis Mohammadi? I'm an Indian. I'll take pride in calling upon Indians. So only one name today comes to my mind is Irom Sharmila, the Iron Lady from Manipur, who went on a 16-year-old hunger strike against the AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act. So Dr. Ayushi will tell us where are the answers. Is it the international community that is going to give us the answers which have no teeth, the multilateral architecture? Are we going to find answers within? Are we going to find answers in spirituality? Are we going to find answers in dharma? I think these are what my poses are. Thank you so much, friends. And I'd call upon Lokesh ji, the IQAC coordinator, to please come. Come on, just for 2 minutes, sir.
थैंक यू मैम. मेरे अपना माई का जिसे कहते हैं जेएनयू, और कुछ दिनों मैंने नीपा में भी गया था काम करने के लिए. नीपा के आसपास में मतलब कैंटीन यूज की थी, तो नीपा और जेएनयू दोनों पे मिले, उनके साथ काम किया है. मैं ज्यादा टाइम नहीं लूंगा, 4 सेंटेंस जयशंकर प्रसाद की सुनाकर जाऊंगा और आप समझ लेना कि उनको रखना चाहिए या नहीं रखना चाहिए। एक वेब सीरीज है ताली, आप जरूर देखना। और उसमें 3 बातें वो जरूर कहती है कि पहली लड़ाई हमारी एग्जिस्टेंस की है, दूसरी लड़ाई हमारी सर्वाइवल की है, और तीसरी लड़ाई आप सोच लेना किस चीज की है। वो तीसरी आप पर है। तो आप सोचना कि वो तीसरी लड़ाई किससे है। एग्जिस्टेंस और सर्वाइवल के बाद की जो तीसरी लड़ाई शुरू होती है वो हमें सोचना चाहिए। जयशंकर प्रसाद की 4 सेंटेंस है कि नारी तुम केवल श्रद्धा हो, विश्वास रजत नक पक्तल में, पीयूष स्रोत सी बहा करो जीवन के सुंदर संतल में। अभी नीचे एक पोस्टर लगा था, इसमें कुछ यहाँ पर और कुछ वेलफेयर की बातें लिखी हुई है इसमें। विमेन वेलफेयर की बातें हमारे हिंदुस्तान के इतिहास में हम 3 तरह से विमेन को जानते हैं। माता के रूप में जानते हैं, एक धन के रूप में जानते हैं, एक दान के रूप में जानते हैं। कन्या धन है, कन्या दान भी है, और कन्या माता भी है। अब आपको ये सोचना है कि माता, धन और दान के अलावा भी कोई स्वरूप हमारा बन सकता है या नहीं बन सकता। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आप सबने बुलाया। और क्योंकि एक स्टूडेंट ओपन हाउस है, हमें वो जरूर करना है, और सब आप सबको एक्सपोजर देने के लिए वो कार्यक्रम बुलाए गए हैं। हम लोगों का बड़ा इनिशिएटिव, और शायद किसी कॉलेज लेता भी नहीं इस तरह का। ये डेयरिंग वाला इनिशिएटिव है कि स्टूडेंट्स पता नहीं क्या कहेंगे, वो सुनने की हम साहस रखते हैं। और हम चलते हैं वहां पर। अभी मुझे और मैडम को दोनों को जाना है, मंजीत जी को भी जाना है। आप सबका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आप एंजॉय कीजिए कार्यक्रम का। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Well, friends, we will move on with the program. And may I call upon our first speaker, Dr. Anshu Srivastava from NEPA. I think she has a brilliant presentation, and we all are eager to hear her. I know her work is really in depth. Please, a big round of applause for her.
Good morning, students. Can I hear somebody here? Yes, students, are you? Yes, that's better. So thank you, Professor Harpreet Kaur, Dr. Lokesh of the IQAC coordinator, Professor Madhuri, who is the organizer of this event. The WDC, the entire WDC of Mata Sundari College, it gives me actually great pleasure. And I can see the amount of effort and pains that so many students are here because I've spent 13 years in an undergraduate college, which is Indraprastha College. I find my former colleague, Dr. Avneet, also here. That how difficult it is to organize an event like this at a short notice, and so many students waiting patiently to hear our submissions. All right, so so the topic that has been sort of flagged or has been given to me is empowering women through the lens of G20. Now, I want to just divide my talk. It's 1 o'clock right now. So let's say 35 minutes is what has been told to me. Ma'am? Yes? Okay. So I'll go by the history first, then G20, and of course, look at critically what G20 actually did for women, particularly. So let me just briefly begin with the history of women and development.
So let me begin. Undergraduate teacher, is bilingual okay, or should I just speak in English? Bilingual? Okay. Yeah. So मेरा ये assumption है कि यहाँ काफी सारे political science students होंगे क्योंकि माधुरी मैम है, तो आई एम अज्यूमिंग कि पॉलिटिकल साइंस के काफी स्टूडेंट्स होंगे. आप लोग के पास एक ऑप्शनल पेपर पहले, अभी तो नहीं है शायद, एक ऑप्शनल पेपर होता था यूनाइटेड नेशंस का in the third year, right? Any of you are aware that when does the development discourse actually begin for women? Any idea? Okay, so I'll give you the answer. It's actually in the decade of 1970s with the work of a Danish economist who actually called Esther Boozerup, who actually flagged about women's contribution in agriculture. We're talking about conflict. We're talking about various spheres, various sectors. But the first, sort of step towards including or talking about women in development was in the 1970s with the work of Esther Boozerup, who actually talked about how women's labor goes unrecognized in agriculture in Africa, for example, right? So you see the farmer working on the land, but you do not see what women do to help the farmer go to his farm, right? So the first work was this. Then you have subsequently the United Nations International Women's Decade, which started from 1976 to 1985. Please stop me if you find it too theoretical. I do not wish to make it too theoretical, but some important facts need to be placed before I go ahead. This decade actually led to 3 women conferences, UN women conferences in Mexico City in 1975. Why is 1975 so important for India? Can anybody respond? Let us make it a little interactive so that you also remain sort of riveted in the talk. Why is 1975 important for India? Iske alawa, I'm talking in context of women. The Status of Women report came out in 1975. That is the first time that actually India started, started looking at including women, and there was a talk about status of women in all kinds of sectors in India. Okay. So the first conference of UN took place in Mexico City in 1975, the second Copenhagen in 1980, and the third in Nairobi in 1985. All these incorporated and mainstreamed gender concerns internationally. These conferences in turn invigorated and expanded the movement and elevated the role of feminist organizing and legitimacy of feminist concerns in international politics. Simultaneously, now this is important, the theoretical track of WID, WAD, and GAD in development discourse brought forth the several approaches, actions along with the programs directed at third world women. So before you go to G20, you need to be a little clear about what are the theoretical tracks which involve empowering women, right? Or is empowerment one of these approaches, right? So simultaneously, so a very important feminist called Carolyn Moser in 1993 pointed out to 5 distinct approaches for mainstreaming women. What were these 5 approaches? 1, welfare. 2nd, equity. 3rd, anti-poverty. 4th, efficiency. And the 5th one you can see on the board is empowerment. So this is one of the approaches to mainstream women in development. Okay, so let me come to the second set of policy measures. You've heard of Millennium Development Goals. Have you heard them in international relations? Millennium Development Goals, and more recently, Sustainable Development Goals, which came out in 2015. Right? Are you aware of them? So any idea about which goal talks about women's empowerment? It's goal 5. It's goal 5, which talks about women's empowerment and arriving at gender equality. And you know that 2030 deadline has been given to sort of achieve women's equality or the empowerment of women and girls, right? Now, I wish to, I will point out certain specifics or certain problems with this word empowerment. That's why I said there are 5 approaches and empowerment is the last approach. Now, what is problematic about empowerment? I'll speak about it a little later. Let me talk about G20. So let me talk about straight away about G20. So what has been the approach of G20? What has anybody can point out any one measure? Economic development. What else? Okay. What are the other? Why do you think India's presidency at G20 remains important for women's empowerment? Anything specific? I already pointed out that empowerment has been spoken about since 1970s through different approaches, and the last approach was empowerment. Any idea? Okay, so let me just flag important, let me say 4 important measures, 4 agendas of G20 in terms of women's empowerment. So one is women's digital and financial inclusion, right? Women's digital and financial inclusion. Let me also point out the figure globally. 42% of women remain outside the financial system. The gender gap remains still as 7%, right? 42% internationally that they remain outside the formal financial system, and the gender gap remains 7%. Second, strengthening women's capacities to make them equal stakeholders in development. So long-term structural barriers have been sort of spoken about in terms of, removing these structural barriers. The third is enabling women's leadership at all levels of decision-making. At present, let me give you some figures. 17,000 women elected to Panchayati Raj is the present figure. 17,000 women are part of the Panchayati Raj structure. 10,000 of the defense forces, and 19 million women are there in administrative offices. But does this give you a holistic picture? These many women here, these many women here, these many, is it giving you any kind of a holistic picture? Do you still think that empowerment has been met? No. So clearly the answer is in front of you. The fourth is to ensure sustainability of outcomes realized across various initiatives. So, for example, the need for gender disaggregated data. You know, a very important, milestone was achieved in the time use survey of 2019. If any of you get a chance to see that survey, the time use survey in India, it's a very important. You know what time use survey does? Any idea? Any economists here? Okay, so time use survey is a method. It's an econometric method to really map how much of time you're spending in what activity, right? So when we talk about gendered labor, which is largely unpaid and unrecognized, devalued, right? I'll give you the Indian figure. There are many figures internationally, but a man would indulge in 1 hour 37 minutes of unpaid labor, whereas at the same time, a woman would give 5 hours some minutes. There are some, I think 7 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that. 5 hours to unpaid labor, at least domestically, right? So this is how the Time Use Survey maps how men and women are spending the time for paid as well as unpaid activities. And what is more important is the unpaid activity, which most often is I would say most often or almost 90%, 80% is done by women. You already know that, right? So G20 agenda basically flags off these four important, sort of agendas. If I come to, for example, looking at, okay, so this is just, sort of flagging off the G20 agenda. Now, what is very important is to look at critically what we have achieved and what we haven't. Okay, so if I were to look at empowerment and the theory of empowerment, do you find this word problematic? Why someone has to empower us? Any other response? Why do you think there is a need to empower women? Okay. Any other response? Particularly in context of India. Okay, so I was really, thank you. May I know your name? Akansha. So Akansha has, sort of nailed the coffin with the correct sort of answer that I was looking for. It is because of the patriarchal structure that these 5 approaches have been sort of, taken. And empowerment remains an important approach, but the word empowerment is not complete and holistic because of the patriarchal structure that we are living in, particularly in India, right? Justice theorists in the 1970s have actually sort of looked at reordering of social and economic arrangements. So you may have heard of John Rawls, have you? Yeah, so you know John Rawls, Robert Nozick, and many of them were talking about restructuring of society through social and economic arrangements. But it is very interesting that during the same period, feminist scholarship had proposed a radically new approach to analyzing social and political institutions based on the precept that personal and political relations are highly interdependent. So that brings me to the point that Akansha flagged off, that if you have a policy measure called empowerment, there has to be a cause and effect relationship. And the cause is obviously patriarchal norms and relations that exist in society. And the result is therefore, or at least the alleged or the supposed policy measure that one needs to take is empowerment. And for example, Susan Moeller-Okin, which you might be attempting in political theory, for example, sort of flags off that there is no justice in society without justice at home. So justice really begins at home and then goes out to the public domain, right? So let me just problematize the word empowerment, because I'm supposed to be looking at empowering women through the lens of G20. I've just flagged off the agendas for G20, and let me point out what are the critical or the problematic factors with regard to empowerment. Let me take 2 very positive takes about G20 on women's empowerment. One is that women-led development is, I think that I can safely sort of, feminist scholars can safely sort of credit G20 for, is 2 important outcomes. One is women-led development has emerged as a crucial focus area on life force approach basis, marking a shift from women's empowerment alone, right? So there is a shift in which women's empowerment alone has shifted to a theoretical framework, which is called the life course approach, sort of looking at outcomes. Second, there has been a significant talk of G20 on leadership, right? I flagged off 4 important agendas. One is leadership. So yes, leadership has been spoken about even in 2019, even in earlier G20 agendas. But what is the takeaway in G20 under India's presidency has the focus on empowerment and recognition of women at the local and community level remains one important positive outcome. So women's leadership at grassroots, I quote Prime Minister Modi's statement, women's leadership at grassroots is a bedrock of inclusive and sustainable progress. So that is, I can give you some data on what is the W20 and G20 Empower, the 2 bodies which were sort of negotiating on the G20 agenda. But I'll just limit myself to saying that these are the 2 positive outcomes of G20's presidentship under India. Okay, now let me come to the more important and the more meaty aspect of looking at empowering women, so to say. So let me get back to empowerment and look at what is problematic. Okay, so let me begin with the conceptual problem with empowerment. So, for example, have you heard of Srilata Batliwala? Anybody who's worked in the area of women and development? She's a very important feminist scholar in India in the 1990s, particularly in the 80s. Post Status of Women report, she remains a very important scholar. So let me look at the definitional problems of empowerment. Srilata Batliwala envisions the concept. I draw your attention to Akansha's definition. Srilata Batliwala's Batla envisions the concept of women's empowerment as a process of challenging existing power relations and of gaining greater control over sources of power. Now, if this is the definition, can you see the problem with the word called empowerment? Because power is at the root of empowerment, right? For the word empowerment, power is the sort of a root. Then I quote the second scholar called Beena Agrawal, a very famous or a very well-established feminist economist who basically distinguishes between women's empowerment and women's welfare. I can give you some data on G20's platform on which, so for example, if you look at, I'm quoting the 4 important campaigns that Government of India has been running in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years. So one is the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao Andolan. India has shown 16-point improvement at sex ratio at birth since 2014. There is the Mudra scheme, right, which provides for microfinance, has about 70% women beneficiaries. I'm just going by India's data right now. There is Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, which was, sort of flagged or moved in 2015. There is Mission Poshan 2.0, which is an integrated nutrition support program, has served over 12 million pregnant and lactating mothers. Then there are establishment of working women's hostels and various skill development programs and initiatives to secure their safety and freedom from violence. If I were to look at these programs, my attention is drawn to Beena Agrawal's very important, let me say, conceptual clarity in which she distinguishes between, the concept of women's empowerment and women's welfare. Because you can see that with these programs, you can achieve women's welfare, but you may not necessarily lead to women's empowerment, right? So many of these government programs are run. Women's welfare is almost tackled, or at least significantly tackled, or at least I could easily conclude that there is a quantum jump in women's welfare. But with these programs, do you still think, now students, I just want you to respond to this. Do you still think with these government programs we have reached empowerment? So this is what Beena Agarwal is actually pointing out to, that you need to really be very, very conceptually clear what is women's empowerment and what is women's welfare. So to my mind, what the government of India has been sort of emphasizing is women's welfare and not really empowerment. With the under the aegis of the word empowerment, it's actually talking about welfare. So there is a bit of a conceptual gap, or I would say there is still I would say there is a need to sort of reckon with the issue of empowerment. So if I were to go by if I were to look at Oxtel and Baden, who have clearly pointed out how empowerment is actually conceptualized. They say that power is at the root of empowerment, right? And they say that whether empowerment can do these four: power over, power to, power with, and power within. Professor Harpreet Kaur, in her introductory address, talked about self-worth, right? Can empowerment really, with these policies, really tackle the issue of self-worth, self-confidence, or what is commonly termed in social sciences, the agency of women? Yes, students, can I get some response from you? Through these policy measures, can you at least aim to achieve power within? You can sort of achieve power to, power with, and power over to a certain extent. But would you be able to achieve power within? It comes not only from within, it also comes with the structure, right? If you have an empowering or an equal structure, this you will not really need to work for, right? It will come sort of naturally, right? The fact that power within is also flagged by scholars is a very important, and in fact, feminist scholarship actually lays the utmost sort of importance on power within, right? Because if you see even in a college structure or in any institutional structure, and if you have men and women, sort of working together, you will see that women tend to, sometimes, take a back seat, and, because of the double work burden or triple work burden, and so on and so forth. So who's responsible for that? It is society at large, the social structure, the socialization that is responsible, which actually keeps telling and reiterating women that, well, this is your job, and so on and so forth, right? So that's another problem with this thing. Let me also look at G20's specific agenda on women's empowerment. It's 1:20 now. Okay. So So let's look at G20's 4 agendas, which I placed before you. Can anybody point out to the 4 which I spoke about? Quickly. Come on, students. Oh, that means, financial inclusion and? Yes, very good. Yes, excellent. And the 4th? Sustainability of outcomes. Okay, that's the 4th. Let's look at these 4 together now. If you can see very specifically, this is not only empowerment, that's very specifically talking about economic empowerment, right? Now, I problematized the word empowerment. So I'm further problematizing within empowerment, economic empowerment. Okay, so what is the feminist idea of economic empowerment? in G20. So it finds it limiting because it inserts women into the traditional economic model, which is at the root of many gender-based economic inequalities. It mistakenly equates gender equality as an equality of economic opportunity between men and women. So just looking at, men and women economically will not give you a complete picture, right? It has to be holistic, right? So just empowerment and then only just sort of digital inclusion. But first, let's look at what is the societal structure. We don't even have, when we talked about, we've just gone through the corona crisis in the last 3 years. We all know, whether you were in school or you were in, now maybe some of you might be in 3rd year, you know what difficulties we've seen with the digital divide. So mere digital and financial inclusion will not lead to, the policy outcome. So basically what this economic empowerment is leading to is a very limited understanding of empowerment, and basically taking gender equality as, empowerment of sort of equating it with economic empowerment and saying that, well, equality of opportunities between men and women should be available. They should be available. You know what's the definition of freedom? Can anybody point out the concept of positive freedom? All of your political theory students, you remember the necessary and sufficient condition? So this might be a necessary condition, but this is not a sufficient condition for women's empowerment, right? I also further, sort of problematize economic empowerment, which basically neglects women's over-representation. Today, Professor Harpreet also and Dr. Madhuri also talked about unpaid labor, right? So this idea also neglects women's over-representation among informal workers, pervasive gender wage gaps, and occupationally segregated work. For example, there are occupations which are often considered as feminine. So, for example, nursing, one of the jobs is teaching, for example, often mistakenly, or let me say not mistakenly, but structurally defined as a feminine sort of a occupational segregation, right? So the idea of economic empowerment needs to really problematize this occupational segregation along lines of gender. It also should look at gender wage gaps, and obviously it should really look at over-representation of women in informal sector. That do you know the how many what is the percentage of formal and informal sector in India? Any idea? Any? It's even more. It's even more. It's some years back, it was about 90-10 as well. You can check the this thing. And out of this 90%, there is over-representation of women in the informal sector, which means what? They are devalued. They are first of all, they are de-recognized. They are devalued and also unpaid, right? So clearly there's a sort of a problem there. And last but not the least, empowerment, the word empowerment is also problematic for the following reason. So having educational and economic goals rather than redistribution of resources. We know so many stories within college and within school that if there is crisis at home, we saw it in Corona times also, that if the boy of the house needs to be educated, and the girl also, and if there is financial crisis, who will be given the chance? We already know the answer. It's the boy of the house, right? So having, sort of educational and economic goals rather than redistribution of resources and the inability to recognize reproductive and sexual health and rights in their entirety itself is problematic for the holistic realization of empowerment agenda, right? So there are limiting empowerment remains as a limited word, and the horizons of, so what I basically argue is that please do not limit empowerment to say international platforms. Make them very limited in this conceptual and theoretical track. Instead, please expand them in their holistic meaning for their holistic realization. So thank you. I was given 30 minutes and I've completed 30 minutes, well within time. Yeah. Any questions, students? I'm supposed to take questions right now, please? Or yeah, whatever is your format. Right now we are waiting for our question and answer round, so I'll have it in the either I've been very bad or either I've been very good. What is it? So maybe I think if Dr. Ayushi can, I think we can take the questions together. That would be okay, because they might be still taking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I'd like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Ayushi Ketkar, ma'am, to take over. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I'd like to thank Mata Sundari College and the WDC cell for inviting me here. I realize I'm between you and your lunch, and that's not a very good situation. So I will not, I've been given half an hour, but not long ago, I've been a student, so I understand your situation. And the most important, I understand the situation of that student there who's playing the doorkeeper. So thank you so much, but that's a pretty ugly job you're doing. So I'll try to make your job easier. Just 3 quick points, which is food for thought for you. The topic that I selected was women in, by the way, I teach at the Special Center for National Security Studies, JNU. This is a new center and the only center in India which specializes in national security. And you would wonder why this is needed. Well, this is needed because security is something which happens at various levels: individual, societal, national, global. Unlike cricket, we all think ourselves to be experts of security, which also partially is true. But more importantly, it requires certain tools. And those tools are interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. So this center, which started hardly about 2 years ago, as of now, we run the PhD program, but very soon, hopefully from next year, we will be starting the MA program as well. You all would understand the topic that I selected was women in conflict, uncivil wars in a civilized world. So I think this topic itself is self-explanatory, and you would understand where the need for this topic came about. It's the recent, you've all been viewing the Israel-Palestinian struggle, the manner in which Hamas on October 7th unleashed a reign of terror. This was quite shocking to anybody, not just people dealing with national security. At my center, I face this on a regular basis because I'm the only female faculty member on national security. And trust me, I thank my chairperson and the board of selectors for even having me in, because many a times, more often than not, when it comes to security, as rightly said, and even my previous speaker has mentioned this, the student Akanksha has mentioned this, patriarchy has become almost a systemic problem. It's a systemic issue. And we presume that very important things should not be left to women, including security. It's a male dominion issue. And women, what have women got to do? I mean, we should be dealing with home and preferably kitchen, rearing up kids. So this kind of an attitude is not something which is only prevailing in India. In fact, probably in India, it's the least. Unfortunately, the media likes to think that Delhi is the rape capital of the world, probably. All these kind of, what do you call, the perception or the image building that happens. But it's very interesting to see. So I'll just quickly put out a few pointers. The first is how critical it is important to respect a few categories. When we are talking even of conflict, of war, of crisis, it's important to understand that a few groups are sacred, they are sacrosanct, and they cannot be touched. Women, children, senior citizens come under that category. Because as you see, wars is not something that has happened now. It's not a new phenomenon. It has happened since times immemorial. But the reason for state coming into being was for the simple reason of ensuring that law and order. Most of you, since are students of political science, it's easy for me to explain, and my job becomes easier because you see how social contract and the formation of state itself came into being. It was for the reason that there has to be a proper rules and regulation, a rule-based law and order system to ensure survival of all. For those of you who have some understanding, who come from the commerce background and who come from management, you would you must have gone through this Maslow's hierarchy, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy. Yes. So it begins, the lowest bottom is survival, then security, then social needs, self-esteem, self-actualization. It's a proper pyramid. And through that pyramid, you would understand the basic thing or the survival need is what state takes care of. That is how states came into being, to ensure survival. Otherwise, it would be might is right. जिसकी लाठी उसका भैंस. तो ये नहीं होने के कारण स्टेट फॉर्मेशन हुआ. लेकिन इसके बाद the next level, security can only be ensured by a rule based order. क्योंकि survival तो state देख लेता है. What about security? Because here every day the policing cannot be done by men in uniform. You and I are equal participants to it. The reason why I came up with this topic when Madhuri ma'am asked me, despite a lot of challenges happening on the home front, was because I thought this is very important for us to discuss, debate and discuss, because national security is no more the confines of closed doors and hush-hush dialogue. It has to become a public discourse because it impacts you and me equally. It's not something that can be left to governments or experts. We all have to participate in it. And today, quickly speaking, the Israel-Palestine problem and what Hamas did, this is not something that is, again, it's been there since 1948. Why is it today it has become an all-out war and the world is actually supporting it? The world is supporting it because these sacrosanct categories were violated and violated in a very bad manner. Something which actually traumatizes each one of us. We are thousands of kilometers away from it, but I'm sure you and me felt that at our doorstep. We were like, we wouldn't want this ever to happen anywhere again, not even with our enemies. So the first and foremost thing for us to understand is that we are going back to the basics, the basic of just war. In India, it was called as Dharma Yudh. युद्ध भी जब होता है, उसमें भी धर्म का एक तो the upholding of dharma as well as the entire, the process, the means should be dharmic. So it's very important. This is both in just war theory as well as Dharma Yudh. The origin of war, the means of war, and the end of war, all has to be civil or dharmic in nature. It has to be just. And this is very important to keep in mind. Because if you're talking of a rule-based world, it is very important to understand that the origin of a problem, the means and the end, all of it has to be in a civilized manner. Otherwise, we'll go back. We can as well go back to our barbaric self. Stone Age man, हम वहां पहुंच जाएंगे. इतना जो human beings ने, evolution की बात करे हैं, कहाँ गया ये सारा evolution? So it's very important to keep in mind that rules in times of crisis and conflict is even more critical than in peace times. Because अगर आप peace चाहते हैं, तो ये रूल्स फॉलो करना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, स्पेशली इन टाइम्स ऑफ क्राइसिस. अच्छे टाइम तो सब अच्छे रहते हैं. It is in trouble that the society, each one of us has to ensure this takes place. The second thing that, coming to my topic I want to deal with is breaking myths. Most of the time when we talk of women in conflict, one thing that always comes, and it's true, by far, largely it's true, women as victims. Sahi baat hai, there's nothing wrong about it or nothing to shy away from it, because that is largely true. Women bear the brunt of conflict the most. That's why we say in times of war and in environmental crisis, taking or hearing the voice of women becomes most critical, because they are affected by both these things in the biggest manner. So, when we are talking of crisis, there's a human rights watch that says 4 million women disappear annually in war zones. Can you beat this? 4 million women disappear annually. Ata pata nahi, unki lash tak nahi milti. So they disappear annually in war zones. And this is a very gruesome statistics for any one of us. Each one of us sitting in this room should take cognizance of it. And many of you will go on in life to become researchers, professors, and, leaders in your various groups. You have to keep this in mind. Somewhere or the other, it is your fellow being. Aapki hi koi behan कहीं disappear हो रही है, तकलीफ में है. This is very important to understand, because many a times, and political science में ये बहुत बार होता है, collateral damage. अच्छे terms हम बना लेते हैं, politically right terms या justify करने के लिए ना terms बनाते हैं, जैसा collateral damage. हाँ, युद्ध हुआ है, बमबारी हुई है, तो महिलाएं और बच्चे भी मरेंगे. ये collateral damage is an unacceptable term. Why doesn't collateral damage happen to political heads? Why doesn't it happen to people in power? Why does it happen to women and children? This is something that needs to be questioned by you and me. Because collateral damage ke naam pe, ya sometimes even it's fodder. Because for a long, in between, there have been phases where women have been used as suicide bombers. Easier, soft targets, absolutely. What we call in pol science or national security terms, soft targets. This is happening with religious places. This is happening with women. So they become soft targets. They are used as suicide bombers. The first time for us in India was Rajiv Gandhi assassination. But this is very common in various parts of the world. So they are used as suicide bombers. They're used as sex slaves. We have seen this time and again happening. The first big crisis of this came in Nigeria, when children from schools, young girls from schools were abducted to be Boko Haram brides. Boko Haram is a terrorist organization. Unke fighters ke liye, as brides, they were picked up. And this is common. We've seen Yazidi women being picked up by ISIS terrorists. So this has become a natural norm. See, what happens if we do not refute and stop, if we do not challenge these patriarchal or the existing system, if we do not challenge the status quo, this continues. This becomes the norm. This becomes a systemic problem. आज हम उनको हेल्प नहीं करेंगे, कल हमारे लिए हम तकलीफ में आएंगे तो कोई हमारे लिए बचेगा नहीं. Please keep that in mind, and that's very important to have in mind. They used for ethnic cleansing. यानी एक ग्रुप का आपको completely उसको genocide करना है. You pick up their women, ensure that they are impregnated or they have kids or they are finished. So these kind of things happen, and you've seen exactly this happening in Hamas, killing women, picking up women, publicly raping them, shaming them, parading them nude, and then killing kids. So these kind of barbaric things is unacceptable and should not be taken, just sitting. But having said that, this is the, the sad part of the story, but there's a big silver lining to it. And that silver lining is that women are not only victims, but women can also be the game changers when it comes to women in conflict. The reason I'm saying that, and the best example is India itself. Some of the best fighters have been women. Khoob ladi mardani wo to. We've had a very big legacy of fighters, and not just in India, even in various other parts of the world, whether it's Southeast Asia, Africa, you've had amazingly strong women who have fought. So they are, in women in conflict, it's not only victimhood, rona dhona, ye victim hai, they've been raped, they've been killed. But other than that, there are positive signs where there have been fighters, where there's been let them, it's okay. I can deal with that. So where there have been fighters, we've got very good examples, Abaka Chauta, we've got Jhansi Ki Rani, Rani Chennamma. So whether in peace, in good times or in bad times, there are women who have played roles other than being victims. So there have been fighters, there have been role models, which ma'am has already mentioned, Madhuri ma'am has mentioned many names. Malala Yousafzai was the youngest peace awardee, youngest peace prize winner, rather youngest Nobel Prize winner for that amazing thing. So we've had women as role models, even in India. Not only that, we've got many African leaders. You had Eleanor Roosevelt, who actually was instrumental in that Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You had Lady Diana, who was not only good looking, but actually fought for landmines. So there are various examples of this happening. In India, you had Amrita Devi. Chipko movement, you know, most of the time we talk of Sundarlal Bahuguna ji, but even prior to that, there was this Bishnoi woman, Amrita Devi, who started that. So you have amazing examples of women as role models. And most important, and this is where I would like to stress, women as peace negotiators. This is an extremely critical area, which is really not looked into in greater detail, but I think this needs to be focused on. And this is where all of you can play important roles, especially if you continue with political science or national security. This again can be thought of as a career area, because women can play a very critical role in conflict, because they know exactly both sides of the story. You know, there was a very nice example of an African woman leader who said, you know, they were fighting over about the water, you know, how the water of a certain river should be used during conflict resolution. कि ये नदी हमारी, इसका पानी हम लेंगे या कोई, you know, the other party was, they were fighting about it, till this woman leader said, but वो नदी तो सूख गई है, 2 साल पहले ही सूख गई है, and I don't think, you know, it can be revived. That's when they stopped it and they said, okay, it's negotiated. Because men do not know ground realities, which women do. They face this on a daily basis. That lady knew it because it was her community people who would go and fill that water. So please understand, when women know ground realities, they can play a better role in negotiating. I don't know how many of you know this, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was actually being called Universal Declaration of Rights of Men. Because till then, rights of men was the common thing. It was understood rights of men bole to women be included hai. Okay. It was an Indian lady, Hansa Mehta, an Indian lady from Baroda, who actually said this. Why men? In fact, you should have it as women, because women mein men included hai. WOMEN. Women daliye. Agar aapko dalna hi hai, if you have to make it gender specific, make it women, because that will include men. Then it was thought, no. Then they thought of various things, and that's how human rights came to be known. Otherwise, it would have been Universal Declaration of Rights of Men, not Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So this is where women, it's that sensitivity, that's, you know, small thing called sensitivity and sensibilities, which are more pronounced and better with women, and they do a good job. Here I'd quickly mention 2-3 important statistics, which for researchers, I think is important. I think you can go through those reports in greater detail. The United Nations Women's Study, they've conducted a study on women at the negotiating table. And these are very nice, it's a nice longitudinal study. And I think, you know, it's worth having a look when in your free time. One is, they've said, where women are on the negotiating table, there has been a 20% increase in the possibility of peace, with a gap of at least 2 years, a minimum of 2 years, because of women negotiators, and a 35% rise in a peace negotiation of 15 years, around 15 years. So you can understand, if you want greater peace, longer duration of peace, it's important to have women at the negotiating table, because not only do they know ground realities, they are the main sufferers. They know every aspect of the conflict, and they'll be able to give better suggestions and better views. Moreover, military or wars is a very masculine thing. So for that, you need to have somebody who has the power of persuasion, who can dialogue it and have, you know, aag ko nahi kaatta waisa, it needs water to actually fight with fire, to do some firefighting. Another important of that same report, there's a very interesting thing. Despite the role of women and the known, absolutely known role of women, yet there are only 4% signatories of peace deals. You know, when there are peace negotiations happening, only 4% women are able to participate in it. And there are only 10% negotiators in the world, women negotiators in the world, in conflict zones. So just imagine how much scope there is when it comes to women in conflict as peace negotiators. This is a very important thing because men mostly talk two things. For men, it's carrot and stick policy. It's either inducement, kuch ye le lo, हाँ, ये आपका benefit होगा, inducement, or coercion, zabardasti. You know, they give warnings. You know, otherwise you'll be punished like that. With women, it's the power of persuasion, and that is very important and extremely critical. Women also have a very important, we call 3Ds, okay, when there's conflict. One, deterrence, try to avoid conflict. Second is defense, that's the actual fight in conflict, that's in action. And third, disaster management, then you try to curb the consequences of the conflict. In these 3Ds, 2Ds, women play an extremely critical role, deterrence and disaster management. While the defense part is largely taken care by men, the fighting is done by men. Women can play an important role in preventing conflict, or they also play an important role after the conflict in rehabilitation, disaster management, those kind of things. So it's very, here I'll just leave you with a food for thought. Jimmy Carter, US president, and who now does a lot of, did a lot of work on women. He says the more gender equity in a country, the less likely it is to go to war. So he says not only in times of crisis, but even prior to crisis, hearing the women, having them at the table, having, listening to their issues becomes very important, because this kind of inclusive dialogue actually prevents war in the first place. Where there is gender equality, the chances of war is minimal. Here in this connect, it's important to have two more scholars, Valerie Hudson. She did a very interesting study of how sexual order is the first political order. She says, that's the way men maintain the patriarchy or the status quo. Okay, right at the womb, if you're able to, have rights over their over their bodies or their reproductive system, that's how you continue the status quo. You ensure that they are heard. Another interesting study here is Mary Caprioli, and this study is, I think, you can find it on the net. She makes a direct correlation between gender inequality and terrorism. जहां आदमी लोग ज्यादा होते हैं, exactly, missing women as we say, where the ratio of men is much larger than women, there many people take to acts of violence, including terrorism. आप देखिए, Gulf areas में, Gulf countries में, what we call West Asian countries have more quantity of men, and especially the number of women is less. So where there are more men, Afghanistan, okay, more men, where you have more men, the tendency to fight, have, entertain violence or get into those kind of situations is much more. And finally, last point. So that's important to understand, that you have to break myths or silos and bring women to the national security discourse. Finally, what I'd like to end with is the Indic contribution. For us in India, this is even more interesting and enlightening to understand women in conflict, because Bharat akeli jagah hai where women have played a complementary role from the beginning. I have problem with two terms, which is very popular in international relations and which probably is a misfit in India. One is the concept of empowerment itself, because we have always treated women as an empowered lot. Janini, okay, Shakti, Janani. In fact, it's only in the Western world where the right to reproduce, the reproductive right, is considered as a disadvantage. Here, it is revered, it is worshipped. So Janani, or the role of a mother, the biological, it's considered not a biological disadvantage. It's always been a biological advantage. In fact, the biggest god, Mahadev, also appears in Ardhanarishwar. So it's always the role, the complementarity, the Shiv and Shakti. It's a complementing thing. So feminism rather is a misfit here, because feminism, what we are saying is, feminism, the main, the raison d'etre of feminism is equal rights. Well, in India, women have had higher rights. They have been put in a higher pedestal than men. So we are actually bringing ourselves down by debating feminism, by saying, look, let's discuss feminism. We want equal rights. No, we have higher rights. We have better. You can't produce babies. We can. That's something only that nature has given us. Otherwise probably the world will come to an end. So please understand, we are an empowered lot. All we need is, as they say, Akash and Avkash, the freedom and the opportunity. And the recent, parliament bill on women, 33% in the parliament, is a sign in the right direction. I think we're doing the right thing. So we have to just keep in mind two things. It's back to basics. That is, go back to, follow dharma in everything, including in conflict. And secondly, there has to be complementarity or the equal role of women in peace and in war. Sirf war mein hi nahi, peace mein bhi. You know, it's very important to break all these glass ceilings. I have one VC in my university who's done that. A university which started in 69. So the first time, you know, it's almost taken 40 years to have the first woman VC. Yeah. So we have to break those glass ceilings and those stereotypes. And we have to ensure, see, we have to remember peace is not just the absence of war. Peace is actually the prevalence of an ecosystem which is needed for everyone's well-being. And this is very important for us to keep in mind, because if things are good in peace times, then things will also not be barbaric. They'll be civilian even in war times. So with that, thank you. I end with that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now the room is open for Q&A. All the participants are requested to please ask your questions if you have any. Yes, please.
In the parliament, if you remember, the first response to this was all of quota, right? So women of upper caste. So two sets of problems. One, this proxy problem, and the second was that only women of upper caste and maybe wives, daughters, so on and so forth will be represented. You know that, and probably one. So okay, but let me clarify my own position. So you maybe right. I would go. So what I see this bill as, it is still not. It is in distant future that we will see this, because there have been two important conditions that have been put, and that is of delimitation, right? So when that delimitation is going to happen and when you will have this bill really in reality, we really do not know. The point that I want to sort of emphasize is, it is a step. It is a step in the direction of women's, if you choose to see empowerment, but I have already problematized the word empowerment. And feminists themselves see a lot of problem in empowerment. So Western feminism is already problematizing the word empowerment, as I've already pointed out. But what I would choose to take the position is that quotas. So I'll take Zoya Hassan's position on quotas within, in the caste reservation. That if there are numbers, if you remember the Mandal Commission debate, there were two things that Mandal Commission actually spoke about. One is the quotas, and the second were qualitative measures. So, say having a blackboard in the room, in the classroom, having enough, rooms for teachers at both the school and the higher education, improving the quality of education. But you know that for 20, 30 years, the Mandal Commission report was put in dumps. And only one thing was picked up, and that was quota politics. And you have seen the significant expansion of OBCs only because of the quota politics, right? So I would say that this might be one step towards at least a limited understanding of empowerment. Quota may be one method, but it is not a very holistic method, because as I said, empowerment it cannot be just numbers. Who are these 33% women is important, and why 33 is also important, right? And along with just women being in parliament, there has been a recent study on the number of questions that have been asked by women parliamentarians. I mean, it's just very recently these numbers have been, placed in the media. It's party-wise segregation. How many from BJP? How many from Congress? How many from other parties, other regional parties, and so on and so forth. So parliament cannot be just, it just can't be, okay, I've got the seat, I'm just sitting there. I need to, sort of deliberate on what are the measures that have been spoken about, right? So that's my response on your empowerment. I think I don't have a very, sort of yes, no kind of an answer, but it is a qualified answer. So quota first, and then we could look at, so I would take this position, quota first, and then we could look at what is the effect of implementation of 33%, and then go on to, if need be, quota within quota. So mine would be step one, step two. That would be my response. Dr. Shashwati, you have spoken about empowerment and Indian state's position and empowerment. So as I already spoke about the fact that there needs to be deep amount of conceptual clarity. So you yourself have sort of answered this question, that these are not empowerment measures. These are rather as Beena Agarwal would call it, these are merely welfare measures. So there is a conceptual clarity that is needed on equality, on welfare and empowerment. So there are three kinds of, approaches. And empowerment, and of course, all three are interrelated because gender equality should have welfare and empowerment both. As I said, that there were 5 approaches. All these 5 are important. So if you are looking at, say, let's say, gross enrollment ratio, India has, significantly taken a jump. I just gave you the statistics for sort of Mudra Yojana and so many government schemes. But these will not lead to empowerment. So you are right there that these are not necessarily empowerment measures. And there is where we are, this is a catch-22 situation, or let me say it's a problematic situation because G20 is making welfare measures in the name of empowerment. So I think there needs to be much more done. And as we all know, that first and foremost, the patriarchal structure needs to, be, sort of dismantled or whatever. As she talked about, the only women professor in her own center, and it's taken 40 years in a university which is famous for various scholarships and so on and so forth to get a woman vice chancellor. Though I think this of recent this trend of women vice chancellors is increasingly becoming also problematic within their structures, and we well, this is not the right forum to talk about it, but yeah, over to Dr. Ayushi.
Yes, thank you. Quickly, physical or mental problem? No, it's nano. It's a systemic problem. Because we feel even very strong women. The program has to become doctor. So bound by the society law. So it's nothing to do with if you want that system needs to change. Clearly we have to deal with patriarchy first. And that's precisely, ma'am, coming to your question, that's precisely why I didn't deal with women as perpetrators. Because these are few and far between cases. The best example of it I always give is my own area of study of specialization, Jammu and Kashmir. The bigger impact than those separatists was Asia Andarabi, who ran an organization called Dukhtarane Millat. Okay, it was a women's organization, burqa-clad women who would go there and who would pelt stones or say, Bharat Murdabad ke naare wahan lagate the. That was the bigger problem. You can blame them, you can tag them or label them as perpetrators. But please understand, even these perpetrators are an agent of the systemic problem that we face. They are agents of the system. Because this is the socialization process that has happened for millennium, for many, for centuries. So we just take it for granted. How can you question this? This is the right thing. Many of them. In fact, now the recent Manipur case also, you can say, it's the women who have been the perpetrators. They are the ones who caused the, the havoc that has happened. But I did mention that because the moment you do that, we miss out on the cause completely. First, you have to deal with patriarchy. You have to dismantle that, and then we'll discuss, because these are aberrations. Women as perpetrators are aberrations, but men as perpetrators have become the norm. Okay, so that needs to change. Because if that doesn't change, then coming to the same question, what would you term as civil and uncivil? Yes, terminology is a big problem, and we need to be very careful, because ultimately, as social scientists, it's a lot about play of words. So the terminology matters. For me, it's a simple thing. I'll give you a very simple explanation of what I think, in my humble opinion, what is civil. Civil is, where based on values which are universally accepted and which are eternal in nature. Like, for instance, not harming combatants is something that you and me, anybody from any part of the world will accept. It's not just Bharat, it's not just peace-loving Bharat, but any form of war will say, युद्ध का समय हो गया, yes, आप योद्धा से लड़िए, आप एक निहत्थे, एक फार्मर से लड़ रहे हैं, एक महिला और बच्चे. What will a 6-month-old child do to you? How will it harm a soldier? Yet that child is killed. So that is uncivil. Civil is something which is universally accepted and which is eternal, which is based on value system. beyond all these laws, rules, regulations, norms, there is something called humanity and humanitarian laws. I think that becomes critical when we term things as civil or uncivil. Thank you. Okay, quickly speaking on 50%, this is just a number. I'll tell you why. Because the simple thing is, even after 50%, you can't ensure that it's an equal society. These are just affirmative actions. Like at one point of time, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar struggled to get reservation for the scheduled caste for Dalits. This is an affirmative action. This is a positive action. Ultimately, it's the society, it's you and me who are the what do you say, checks and balance. The actual checks and balance is you and me. Because rightly said, they are sarpanchpati. आप 33% में भी गड़बड़ होगी, बिकॉज उसमें भी सरपंचपति आएंगे, तो आप क्या करोगे? आप तो फिर तो आप बोलोगे फिर इसका मतलब ही नहीं है. लेकिन आज अगर नहीं लेंगे, बदलाव कैसे आएगा? टेल मी हाउ विल द चेंज कम? So that affirmative action or positive discrimination is critical to begin the thing. It is the first step. लेकिन आगे चल के इसको सही तौर पे सही तरीके से चलाना ये आपकी और मेरी जिम्मेदारी है. We as women understand ना ये गलत है, ये सरपंच पति है, तो उसकी नहीं सुने. अगर पूरा गांव उसका नहीं सुनेगा तो क्या उसका पावर क्या रहेगा? We are the agents of power. Power stems from us. We the people of India. Remember the constitution. Why does it say we the people of India? Because you and me are empowered. I mean, we have to change the things. It's the society which we bring about. Thank you.
Let's not forget we also have members join us online, so we just cannot overlook that. So we are waiting for a minute or so. Any questions in the chat box?
Our distinguished speakers will take them up. I think at the moment I don't see, but still, Avneet. Yeah, sure. Just give me 1 minute. We've not got any. No? Yes, Anushka, please go ahead.
निकलेंगे नहीं. It's a catch-22 situation. हाँ, औरत की सबसे बड़ी दुश्मन है. तो will a man come and help you, come to your rescue? वो तो chances और भी कम है. I'd rather risk myself with a woman if that's the case. Okay. And as far as your question, we have mentioned that they're soft targets. Women, children, places of worship. I mean, can you expect a terrorist holding an AK-47? Even if I'm the professor of national security, I'll be afraid. I'll fear that. So it's a soft target, and you can't combat. Force cannot be always countered with force. That's why here Gandhi's moral force becomes important. Sometimes the power lies within. You have to invoke that higher power to do. वरना मैं किसी terrorist के साथ कभी लड़ूंगी ही नहीं. लेकिन हाँ, as a professor of national security, I'll make sure that these people are kept in check through policies, through processes, and through people's participation. I'll ensure that. Okay, so that's the power you have.
Both the speakers have the question they were asking, and the answer that given by Dr. Anshul are the that the most relevant. I think there are still some questions unanswered
Which I have, but I'll leave it for a later time because I just cannot, take away time from other students. If you have now, I'll finally, call upon Dr. Savita. She's our co-convener to give the vote of thanks. But thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It has been a very enlightening session. Thank you.
थैंक यू ऑल ऑफ यू। स्टार्टिंग में सबको थैंक्स बोल दिया, अब एक एक करके सबको इत्मीनान से फुर्सत में थैंक्स करूंगी क्योंकि मुझे किया ही गया, बोला ही गया वोट ऑफ थैंक्स के लिए। सबसे पहले मैं थैंक्स करती हूँ अपनी प्रिंसिपल मैम का, जो इस तरह के प्रोग्राम्स के लिए हमें परमिशन देती हैं और बड़ी जल्दी से देती हैं, तो बहुत एनकरेज भी करती हैं। दूसरा मेरा थैंक्स जाता है लोकेश जी के लिए, जो IQAC के कोऑर्डिनेटर हैं, क्योंकि IQAC भी अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी बॉडी है कॉलेज में। तो उन्होंने भी समय निकाल कर, हालांकि उनका खुद का भी अपना प्रोग्राम अभी है, चल रहा है, तो उसमें वो समय निकाल कर यहाँ आए, उनको मैं थैंक्स करती हूँ। और फिर एडमिन ऑफिस के मंजीत सर को भी थैंक्स करती हूँ। और ठीक है, ठीक है। तो इसके बाद मेरा थैंक्स जाता है, सबसे वेरी बिग थैंक्स, प्रोफेसर माधुरी सुखीजा जी को। वो इसमें डेढ़ या दो, मैं तो डेढ़ नहीं 2 महीने से जुटी हुई है इस प्रोग्राम को करने के लिए। और मुझे तो उन्होंने परेशान भी नहीं किया, क्योंकि मैं बहुत बीमार भी चल रही थी, ठीक है ना। तो मैं तो लास्ट मोमेंट पे जुड़ी हूँ इस प्रोग्राम में, बिल्कुल अभी कुछ दिन पहले। लेकिन मैडम ने बहुत ज्यादा इसमें मेहनत की है इस प्रोग्राम के लिए, और बड़े विषय भी बड़े अच्छे, वेरी बिग। और सबसे बड़ी खासियत इनमें यह है कि बड़े ही चुन चुन के विषय लेकर आती है, मतलब कि जैसे कि बहुत अलग हटके, अभी जैसे G20 समिट हुआ है, तो उसके लिए उसका विषय ही उन्होंने चुन लिया और आपको चुन लिया है ना। तो इसलिए जो है वो स्पीकर्स भी, रिसोर्स पर्संस भी बड़े अच्छे ढूंढ ढूंढ कर लेकर आते हैं, और टॉपिक्स भी। तो मैं इसके लिए भी अप्रिशिएट करती हूँ माधुरी मैम को, और बहुत 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 अच्छे मेहनत से वो काम को, हर काम को अंजाम देती हैं। तो वेरी बिग थैंक्स फिर से माधुरी मैडम। इसके बाद थैंक्स करती हूँ मैं अपनी टीम का भी, जो हमारी टीम है, टीम मेंबर्स हैं, डॉक्टर शाश्वती, डॉक्टर अवनीत और हमारी शुभनीत हैं। और इसके बाद हमारे राधिका मेनन है, वो एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट से हैं, थोड़ी देर के लिए आई थी फिर चली गई, हाँ जी, डॉक्टर राधिका मेनन, उनका भी मैं थैंक्स करती हूँ। और उसके बाद मेरा थैंक्स जाता है, मैं देखिए खुद में मैं लास्ट मोमेंट पे जुड़ी, तो अपना भी थैंक्स कर देती हूँ और हमारे जो टेक्नीशियन हैं, सबसे बड़ा रोल इनका होता है टेक्नीशियंस का, क्योंकि इनके बिना हम अधूरे हैं। हमारी डॉक्टर संगीता पाठक, और आपका नाम शिवांगी, हाँ आपका भी, हाँ हाँ, इनका भी मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करती हूँ तहे दिल से। और अब सबसे बाद में बहुत आराम से धन्यवाद करूंगी अपने रिसोर्स पर्सन का, जो हमारी पहली मैडम है, डॉक्टर अंशु श्रीवास्तव जी। इन्होंने बड़ा अच्छा, बहुत डिटेल से, बहुत डिटेलिंग से, बहुत ही बारीकी से हमें बताया कि G20 समिट क्या है, उसमें महिलाओं का क्या चुना गया, क्या मुद्दे उठाए गए हैं महिलाओं के लिए, कौन कौन से विषयों पर चर्चा की गई है उसमें। तो वही है, थोड़ा सा मेरे जहन में जो आया वो मैं देखती हूँ, कि जैसे G20 में महिलाओं के सशक्तिकरण को लेकर उसको बढ़ावा देने की बात की गई, आर्थिक और सामाजिक तौर पर भी महिलाओं को आगे बढ़ाने का मौका दिया गया, और लीडरशिप को लेकर भी चर्चा की गई इसमें, और जेंडर इक्वालिटी की भी बात की गई है, महिलाओं की खाद्य सुरक्षा को लेकर भी मुद्दे रखे गए, और महिलाओं के कल्याण को लेकर भी इसमें कुछ निर्णय लिए गए। तो उन सभी बातों पर, और जो और मैं एक बात और आपको याद दिलाना चाहती हूँ, महिलाएं किसी भी क्षेत्र में पीछे नहीं है। सबसे पहली जो इकोनॉमिस्ट थी हमारी गीता गोपीनाथ जी, है ना, तो वो भी चर्चा में रही बहुत। तो मैडम ने हर चीज को फोकस करके चली, और अंशु मैडम, आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आपने पूरे बहुत तहे दिल से, बड़े बच्चों के क्वेश्चंस के भी बहुत अच्छी तरह से जवाब दिए, और बहुत अच्छी तरह से इसको एक्सप्लेन किया, G20 समिट को हमारे सामने रखा कि क्या, क्योंकि हम तो उस वक्त वहां नहीं थे ना, तो हमने तो गूगल पे जितना मिला वो पढ़ लिया। तो मैडम ने बहुत एक्सप्लेन करके उसको बताया, हमें समझाया कि G20 में हमारी महिलाओं को कहाँ तक सुरक्षित रखा गया है, कितना रेशो उनको दिया गया है, कितना परसेंटेज किस लाइन में उनको मिला है। तो ये सब चीज हमें बताई। और एक सबसे बड़ी बात मैं कहूंगी, कि जो हमारी महिलाएं हैं ना, जो हम सबसे पहले, कुछ भी होने से पहले क्या है, एक महिला है। और महिला हमारे देश का ही नहीं, पूरे संसार का एक अहम हिस्सा है, क्योंकि उसके बिना परिवार भी अधूरा है, हर चीज अधूरी है। तो इसीलिए उनके बारे में G20 में हमारे जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री हैं, श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी, उन्होंने बहुत अच्छी जो विषय, मतलब हमारे, उनके को खास तौर से ध्यान रखा है महिलाओं का, वो उनके लिए, उनको भी तहे दिल से धन्यवाद जाता है, ठीक है, क्योंकि उनके भी PM साहब के बिना तो कुछ नहीं हो सकता ना। तो फिर उसके बाद जो अंशु श्रीवास्तव मैम का मैं फिर से अगेन धन्यवाद करती हूँ। धन्यवाद मैडम, आप इतना कीमती समय निकालकर हमारे यहाँ आए। और दूसरा धन्यवाद हमारे दूसरे रिसोर्स पर्सन डॉक्टर आयुषी केटकर को जाता है। तो बहुत यंग भी है, और बहुत ही जोश में आके बोली है वो सब सारी बातें, और बड़े जोश से ही उन्होंने बच्चों के प्रश्नों के भी जवाब दिए हैं। जैसे इन्होंने जो एक
सिविल और अनसिविल वॉर की जो चर्चा की है, और उसमें मेरा एक माइंड में टच कर गई एक बात इनकी कि बेस्ट फाइटर सबसे पहले क्या है, वो वुमेन है। मैं सुन रही थी और मैं नीचे उनका पॉइंट नोट भी कर रही थी कि उन्होंने सुभद्रा कुमारी चौहान की कविता से बताया कि खूब लड़ी मर्दानी वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी। हम झांसी की रानी का नाम ले लेते हैं क्योंकि वो हमारे माइंड में है, लेकिन उनके साथ एक महिला और थी जो लड़ी थी। कौन थी? झलकारी बाई। हाँ, तो उनका नाम क्यों नहीं लेते हम? क्यों सब कुछ आते हैं उनका नाम लेने से? हाँ, तो वो भी शूद्र जाति से थी, निम्न जाति से थी, और वो भी पूरी सहयोगी थी लक्ष्मीबाई जी की। ठीक है, मैं उनका नाम भी लेती हूँ साथ में। और बहुत सारी ऐसी फाइटर्स महिलाएं रही हैं। फाइटिंग का मतलब ये नहीं कि तलवार लेकर युद्ध लड़ना। फाइटिंग का मतलब होता है हर क्षेत्र में युद्ध लड़ा जा रहा है। राजनीति के क्षेत्र में भी, प्रशासन के क्षेत्र में भी, और शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में भी, हर क्षेत्र में, सामाजिक क्षेत्र में, परिवार में भी। ठीक है, हर जगह महिला कहाँ है ऐसी जो कि लड़ ना रही हो? हर जगह लड़ रही है। हर जगह उनको अपना अस्तित्व बनाने के लिए लड़ना पड़ता है। और मैडम ने बहुत अच्छी बात कही, आयुषी, आपने बहुत अच्छी बात कही है कि चेंज जो है वो हमारे घर से ही होना है, हमसे ही होना है। अगर हम चेंज नहीं करेंगे, आपकी एक अभी फिल्म आई थी सांड की आंख, आई थी ना फिल्म, तो उसमें चंद्रो और प्रकाशो दादी जो बेस्ट फाइटर, बेस्ट सॉरी फाइटर नहीं, शूटर है ना, तो कितना वो स्ट्रगल करती है परिवार में, क्योंकि उनका पति ही सरपंच होता है ना। और वो किस तरीके से वो निकल के बाहर जाती है, उनको रोका जाता है, उनको दबाया जाता है, फिर भी वो निकलती है और अपनी पोतियों को भी ले जाती है साथ में। तो इस तरीके से तो वो सब चीजें मेरे ध्यान में घूमती हैं। और कि लड़कियों को आगे हमें बढ़ावा देना चाहिए, आगे बढ़ने के लिए उनको किसी भी लाइन में जाने का उन्हें मौका देना चाहिए। आज लड़कियां पायलट तक है, रिक्शा चला रही हैं, ट्रेन तक चला रही हैं, तो कहाँ पीछे है वो? कहीं भी किसी भी क्षेत्र में पीछे नहीं है। और हंसा मेहता का नाम इन्होंने बताया हमें, आयुषी जी ने। और इसके अलावा मैं और भी नाम लेना चाहूंगी जो हमारी फाइटर्स रही हैं, जैसे कि सरोजनी नायडू है ना, अरुणा असफ अली है, सावित्री बाई फुले है। उन्होंने शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में बहुत बड़ी फाइटिंग की है, बड़ा एक सैलाब सला दिया था, और पहली हमारी शायद वो भी है हमारी शिक्षिका, है ना, हमारे देश की। और इसी के साथ मैं विराम देती हूँ। आयुषी जी का दोबारा से धन्यवाद करती हूँ। और उससे भी सबसे बड़ा धन्यवाद, हमारे स्टूडेंट्स के बिना हमारा प्रोग्राम अधूरा है। हमारे स्टूडेंट्स भी आए, क्योंकि ये प्रोग्राम आप ही के लिए किया जाता है। जो आप और भी अच्छा, आज बड़ा अच्छा लगा, स्ट्रेंथ काफी अच्छी थी बच्चों की। इसी तरह बनाए रखें अपनी स्ट्रेंथ। आए, प्रोग्राम सुने, ये आप ही के लिए होते हैं, आप ही को जागरूक करने के लिए प्रोग्राम्स कराए जाते हैं। ठीक है, आपका फिर से तहे दिल से धन्यवाद सभी को।
अभी तो आप भी आओगे, अभी तक तो दो ही